This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. Shocked and appalled to find one of its suppliers may have been paying staff less than minimum wage and making them work during lockdown in an allegedly unsafe environment, Boohoo says it's dumped the company and launched an independent review into its entire supply chain. But Boohoo itself has been dropped by ASOS and Next, and its share price plummeted 30% earlier. Is this a reckoning for the fashion industry? I'm joined by the writer Lauren Bravo, whose book How to Break Up with Fast Fashion looks at some of the practices in the industry. Lauren, is Boohoo the only one doing this kind of thing?
Absolutely not. I mean, the heat is on Boohoo very much at the moment. I think partly because people find it easier to be outraged by things like this happening on their own doorstep. So Boohoo accounts for about 80% of production in Leicester, and with the kind of revelations that garment workers in the UK are being paid as little as £3 an hour and forced to go to work in all kinds of unsafe conditions, I think people have been particularly shocked. But actually, of course, we've known for years that so many fashion brands, fast fashion brands, more expensive brands, designer brands even, are guilty of the same kinds of exploitation or worse. But I think it's easier for us to almost, I suppose, offshore our guilt a little bit, because we imagine that happens in countries far away and we have nothing to do with it, and it's easier to pass the blame.
Is it interesting looking at how quickly other places in the industry reacted, like ASOS and Next, who have dumped Boohoo?
I think it is. I think to me it smacks a little bit of almost, dobbing in your friend at school because you want to avoid detention. I think it's the right decision, don't get me wrong. I think that they've done the right thing, but I think it's so important that this has to be a jumping off point for those brands to examine their own culpability, to, improve their own efforts rather than just sort of basking in the glow of a good PR exercise. And I also think that we say that they've been quick to act, but of course we've known about the problems in the UK's own garment industry for years. It was back in 2015 that it was first exposed that workers were being paid way below minimum wage. There have been several other investigations in the years since, and yet ASOS and Next were still stocking Boohoo until yesterday.
Lockdown's pretty much over for retailers. The stores are open. People have left their houses for the first time in months, trying to get a new wardrobe for this new world that we live in. But do we have to hit the high streets, Lauren?
Look, I never want to tell people that they're not allowed to do something, because I think as soon as you do that, it just makes the appeal all the greater. You want to go and shop more. And as a fashion lover, I completely understand that urge to sort of get back to normality and celebrate with a new outfit. But I think that after everything we've lived through over the last few months, it's even more important now than it ever was to think about the wider ramifications of our decisions. And to us, it might just be a cheap t-shirt as a pick-me-up on the high street, but to somebody else, that is exploitation, that is their livelihood, that is something they are being forced to work long hours for not enough money. And really, I think we should question whether we do need to shop as a way of celebrating the easing of lockdown. Have we not learned over the last few months that there are other ways that we can find a little bit of joy? And perhaps we've got wardrobe stuffed full of clothes we bought before the pandemic that could do with an outing. So I would urge people to think a little bit more carefully about the brands that they're supporting. But hey, there are some brilliant small independent sustainable brands that you can buy clothes from instead. Charity shops certainly are going to really need our business because they've lost out on some vital funds over the last few months. So I would say there are lots of other ways of getting that fashion fix before you race back to the high street.
You've obviously written the book on this, Lauren, which only came out recently. But in the time that it has come out, have you seen or felt that the conversation has changed at all? Are people thinking more about these issues when they're considering what they're going to buy?
Absolutely. It's been really heartening, even just this year, in seeing how the conversation has really sort of amped up. And I'm really pleased at the moment that we're talking about the garment workers particularly, because all too often we are guilty, I think, of focusing so much on the environmental implications of fast fashion, if we're talking about it at all, that we forget about the people. And of course, the truth is that every one of those great environmental side effects has a huge implication for the communities living in those areas. And we can't have one without the other. We can't talk about environment without talking about the people. And, you know, garment workers have for far too long now really paid the price for our fashion habits. And I think that it's time for us to wake up and change that.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.